We live in a social compact where we elect officials to make the laws. Then we expect the FBI and police to enforce those laws. That law enforcement is the first contact between those government rules made for the rest of us to live by and the citizens subject to them. Now, when you think about it, that's naturally where the actual real fairness and equality of the system will be tested. Does it exist or not? In the modern era, Republicans have long claimed to be the law and order party. Bet you've heard that one before. And when these types of issues have been tested along the lines of race and power, with the reports that police abuse force and do other things in a discriminatory way, you may recall many top Republicans stress that the issues require compliance, that people must immediately comply with law enforcement. During the recent BLM protests, conservatives and Trump allies were very quick to publicly lecture Americans, which by implication meant often black and brown Americans, that when law enforcement asks you to do something, really anything, you must immediately just comply.
If, in fact, a police officer gives you a command, please exit the car, you should say, yes, officer, no, officer, okay, officer.
I wish he would have complied a whole lot earlier.
Bad decisions by a cop, but if those decisions wouldn't have been made if the perp didn't run away.
Just comply, please, listen.
Just comply. Now, Sean Hannity says obey the commands immediately. That's the exact standard failed by Trump aides who refused to obey lawful commands, for example, that they simply show up and testify. You saw there the demands that people comply in seconds or minutes. Well, Steve Bannon had weeks to comply with a subpoena and he failed. He's since actually been convicted related to that. Peter Navarro now awaiting trial for the same thing. Both Trump vets' defiance followed the boss. Trump has failed that Hannity standard and defied compliance in many cases. The DOJ case that got him indicted features this timeline we've shown you of months where Trump did not comply. Then his team lied about returning material, and there were more months refusing to comply. That is evidence from the indictment, while in his own way, Trump has confessed to some of it.
I have the right to take stuff. I have the right to look at stuff.
The list of what they took was kind of also vague and meaningless.
So here we are. Donald Trump's many admissions about this include his stated belief that he has the right to keep stuff against a subpoena. That is false. Now, like any defendant, he's legally presumed innocent on these charges, and they'll be processed. But legally, no person can just defy a subpoena without cause or a court challenge. And just to be clear, you know, I try to be as direct as possible. If what he said were true, if people could just ignore subpoenas, then, well, subpoenas would be meaningless. And because subpoenas are the first way we get information to try to adjudicate conflicts, if that system fell apart, you wouldn't have any fact-finding or court system that worked. And that is why the DOJ's timeline against Trump is so damning. Now, the espionage charges in the Trump case are obviously serious crimes. They impact national security. But if we use that Hannity standard for immediate compliance and apply it to, well, what he did, he was talking about interactions over, first of all, smaller issues, smaller accusations, things that grew out of like traffic stops sometimes. And two, his just comply standard was supposed to be applied in minutes, not the months that Trump got in deference from the Justice Department. And there were right-wing lectures. You probably remember them. Even when an unarmed man ran from police after a traffic stop and the officer shot him in the back and killed him. That was the consequence for Walter Scott there. And people said, well, he shouldn't have run. He should have complied. His punishment was immediate extralegal execution. The officer you see on the right there was ultimately given a 20-year prison sentence. Or remember Jacob Blake? He walked away from police. And so you had headlines like this: police shoot him in the back. Now, he effectively did not comply for 2 minutes, and police opened fire. And in that story, you may recall, they shot him 7 times in the back, paralyzing him. That was August 2020. It made national news. And when some Republicans were asked to respond, they went back to just comply, which was a way of sort of justifying that use of force. The idea that maybe the incident was on him for not complying or yielding. Here is Trump ally Lindsey Graham.
I don't know why the gentleman did yield when he was asked to yield.
Now, Graham is a lawyer. He knows it's illegal to use deadly force for noncompliance, for when a gentleman doesn't yield. Indeed, you can only use legal force of a deadly nature under police rules when there's an actual deadly threat. Now, we put this all together for you so you can make up your own mind about what we're seeing and how this relates to where we're headed as a country and whether we need to make some changes, because we can show you Lindsey Graham's response there again to that black American shot in the back within 2 minutes, and it's the opposite of the way he's approached Donald Trump's refusal to yield.
I don't know why the gentleman did yield when he was asked to yield.
If they try to prosecute President Trump for mishandling classified information, they literally will be riots in the street.
Graham conjuring the danger of riots, by the way, as if that lawlessness should somehow slow prosecutors down. He's joined the recent chorus of Trump defenders, and the comparison here is not an exercise. This isn't a rhetorical point. This isn't a meme. This is the actual lived double standard in law enforcement for handling alleged noncompliance. One person indeed appears to walk away, to fail to comply with a law enforcement demand, and within 2 minutes, guns drawn, shot in the back. You're not a threat when you're unarmed, walking away and shot in the back. Gun down. And the other here blatantly refuses to comply for 3 months. And Trump did more than walk away from law enforcement. He spent months defying their commands, from clashing with the National Archives to daring the DOJ to get the rest of that stuff back, you see here, to hiding the subpoenaed material, which is more serious, by the way, than a command from an officer on the street, finally leading DOJ to get that search warrant and do a peaceful search. And that still drew these selective, hypocritical, conservative howls.
The FBI raid of President Trump is a complete abuse and overreach of its authority.
The way our federal government has gone, it's like what we thought about the Gestapo.
This is absurd. Think about it. This has been a witch hunt for 6 years.
What they've been doing to President Trump is political persecution.
It is Joe Biden's DOJ, and they have weaponized this FBI at every turn.
If you're a Republican conservative and you hear the FBI is going after Trump again, it sounds alarm bells.
What a long way from what we so recently heard earlier. Contrast for Jacob Blake and so many other people who've been in that position with police. This is the comparison. That's why the facts and history undercut this recent supposed outrage on the right about the FBI and police conduct. That's why I mentioned earlier tonight that our nation's equality always faces this stress test in these frontline interactions, because those claims about law and order and obeying police were never intended by those Republicans to be applied to everyone. They were not even about respecting law enforcement. They were about power and race and political double standards, which is shown by how many Republican politicians were so quick to turn the once vaunted FBI when it dared enforce the same federal laws against them, and then applied them against Republican leaders, against powerful people, against white people. Now, sometimes you can even hear the emotional shock by Trump veterans that this system, this American authority, these federal agents, the system's cuffs and its shackles could be used in any way, even for a day, against them.
They put me in handcuffs, they bring me here, they put me in leg irons, they stick me in a cell. That's punitive. What they did to me today violated the Constitution.
That was Trump aide Peter Navarro, who was caught up in the January 6th probe and the other issues we mentioned in the news tonight. He did not comply with a subpoena. He did not comply over the time he was given. He did not comply when he was told to show up. And so they did go peacefully take him. And you saw his reaction. No weapons were drawn against him, let alone used, just as the careful search of Donald Trump's estate came so much more slowly and peacefully than these other cases. That's the reality if you want the facts. Now, if you want a corrective, we can give you that too, because all of this is going somewhere. It's a corrective to the recent claims of mistreatment of Donald Trump in that slow search and arrest. And two, because these policing problems are ongoing, the next time you have a police shooting met with public talk about how if people just complied, they wouldn't have gotten killed, you can look at what we see here tonight. And then there's the injustice. Regular citizens with no connections, disproportionately black and brown, facing the over-policing and brutality here, while there is this slow, lawless resistance still basically afforded for not only Donald Trump, you saw the months towards his search, but also other Trump elites, like I showed you. Now, legal experts, civil rights activists, nobody serious here is suggesting that more force be used in those other instances, but rather that law enforcement makes force a last resort in all cases equally. And so this is about Donald Trump because of his moment of accountability, and it is about the political forces that have been completely uncorked by this MAGA era, but it's also so much broader and deeper than that, because the lived history and daily life of so many people in this country is already so familiar with what it means to not comply, what the sanction can be for that, and how it is cold comfort that some of those cases, as I showed you, where there was abuse of power or police brutality against those individuals, some of those cases lead to what? To charges sometimes or a police trial, but it's cold comfort if you are already killed, shot in the back, or paralyzed. So when we have national debates about these rules and laws and double standards, at the very minimum, let's do them factually, let's do them honestly, and let's see which cases are really the outrageous ones.